Hello and welcome to the NTN Midday Update for today, the 29th of July, that is Wednesday 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as we mentioned earlier this morning, this afternoon has been slotted for the National Insurance Corporation to provide an update on the economic recovery program that they have so far put in place. I want to just at this point state Mr. McNaughton McLean, Communications Manager, as well as Suan Shalry Payne, Head of Group Internal Audit at the NIC, is present in studio with us to give us this update. Usually when they come through, they speak to us about the number of applications processed, the number of disallowed claims and what have you, and just giving general update on the NIC in its quest to assist persons at this time in the advent of COVID-19. I want to start with you, Mr. McNeil. If you could just speak to us about the application so far. Where are we at today?
Thank you for having us once again. The application process continues. The NIC continues to process claims to qualifying applicants under the Economic Relief Program. And as of July 28th, we have the total number of applications processed, 36,733. The total number of applications paid, 33,577. The number of disallowed claims to date at 2,895. The total number of queried claims, 261. Now that has been significantly reduced since we were first here, when I think it was hovering about 7,000, if memory serves me right. And the total amount paid to date is $30.1 million, and the average payout per individual is at $897.35. The NIC will continue to process claims, so we understand that people are a little anxious and they're not particularly happy with the speed at which we process claims. However, there are a few factors that are required for us to successfully process the applications, that we need to have correct information from the applicant as well as updates from the employer for every period that they are applying for. And we still have this issue of employers failing to provide the necessary information for us to process claims. And I can give you a little information on that as well. The number of employers registered on the employer portal. Now, the employer portal was created to allow employers to provide that information that would be required for us to process the claims and make the payouts to the qualifying applicants. So the number of employers registered in that portal was 1,367. The number of employers registered but yet to upload any information. These are people who registered, were approved, but have failed to upload information on behalf of the employees, 119. The number of employers yet to submit information for May, 613, and the number of employers yet to submit information for June, 718. Now, I'm sure for June, and Suan can expand on that a little later on, for June, the decision was taken that we would not make any payouts in the absence of upload from the employer. And that is principally because we know for a fact that most people were not at work in April and May because of the shutdown. But as the economy reopened, a lot of people are back at work. And as such, we will require information so that the employers can let us know whether the employees are back at work, whether they are still at home, whether they were made redundant. And we have, this is a significant number, 718 are yet to provide any information. And we've been impressing upon them the need to provide that information.
Okay, thank you very much for that. If you're just joining us, a special good afternoon to you. We are live on NTN from the Information Command Center. For the midday update, we have the representatives from the National Insurance Corporation sitting in with us in the person of Mr. McNaughton McLean, Communications Manager, as well as Ms. Suan Shalry Payne, Head of Group Internal Audit. Mrs. Payne, I just hand over to you at this point. If you could give us an update from your department on the work that has been ongoing so far and perhaps some of the triumphs, challenges that you've so far encountered.
Okay. Okay, one of the, I would like to say, triumphs, we had one of the processes we had agreed that we would put in place is improve on our communication to persons, particularly those persons who would have gotten their applications processed and paid, that they receive an email communication on that. So that has been in place. We also inform persons when the application would have been disallowed for whatever reason. We understand that the absence of information makes things so uncertain and create a lot of the, I guess, the negative publicity that we seem to be getting out there. So we hope that that has managed things some. In response to that, it also gives us an opportunity to get positive feedback back to us. While we have some 18,000 plus successful applications coming through and have processed some payments of 83% of that, you still find the voices of those who are not satisfied are going to come across louder. Which we understand, and those persons are just as important to us, and we continue to amend our processes to meet those queries as well, because they're just as important. But this communication that we have opened in terms of sending emails to persons, informing them of their payment, when it has been paid, for what period it has been paid, we see a lot more persons expressing gratitude and their pleasure with the process. Suffice it to say that there obviously are still some areas that we need to improve on in terms of particularly communicating maybe how the payments have been made. So whilst we communicate that a payment is made and what period, we are seeing some persons responding, querying how the amounts came about. On one of our previous interviews, we would have explained that the main issue had to do with the amount of financial assistance that persons may have received that would have been deducted. I think that is clearly understood. Another factor that persons need to be mindful of is whether or not they are in receipt of another benefit from NIC. The regulations stipulate that applicants would be paid the higher of the two. So they would be paid the higher of the economic relief, or if they have applied for another benefit, maternity benefit, and so on, they would receive the higher of the two. Sometimes, because of the timing when one is processed as opposed to the other, the difference have to be paid to make up for the higher of the two. So if I have to give an example, somebody who applies for the economic relief and they would have gotten they would have been entitled to a payment of, say, $1,000, and they also applied for, say, a maternity benefit, and that maternity benefit amounted to, say, $800. If the maternity benefit is paid already, they would have gotten $800. However, the two benefits together, the $1,000 obviously account for the higher of the two. When they get the economic relief payment, they will be getting $200.
Okay.
Right? If the economic relief was paid first, they would have gotten the entire $1,000 upfront under the definition of you are in receipt of your economic benefit in the amount of $1,000. The maternity benefit, however, would not be processed because they're only entitled to one of the two in the same period. So if the maternity benefit was due for the period of June, the economic benefit was also due for the period of June, they would get the higher of the two, not both. Okay? So persons who are receiving emails telling them your economic relief has been approved for payment in the amount of the payout of $200 for June, persons are querying, particularly when maybe the month before they would have gotten a different amount, maybe the $1,000, if they had not yet applied for the maternity. Okay. So I understand these things are causing some uncertainty, misunderstanding, and I'm hoping that can provide some clarification on that, because we are getting quite a few emails, persons are querying, and it would more than likely be persons who are in receipt of another benefit from NIC. So they would receive the maternity benefit, but they probably are not aware that they don't receive both for the same period.
How do other benefits, how are other benefits considered in this dispensation?
Okay, so similarly, persons apply as normal for any of the other short-term benefits that they would have been entitled to. More than likely, sickness wouldn't, because sickness is normally associated with you being out of work. If persons are out of work already, there's no like certificate to say stay out of work, right? But a lot of the times we see it in the case of maternity. And persons are free to apply for both, and they will be processed. Sometimes it's just the timing of which two different departments are processing. We have a shared system, but there's a timing of which one is processed compared with the other.
Okay. I want to move on to the delineation of the income support that is offered for non-NIC contributors by the government of St. Lucia and the Economic Relief Program of the National Insurance Corporation. What has been your experience so far? Because I understand you've been getting calls for the income support program. What has been your experience so far? And if you could just reiterate to the general public what you are offering.
Well, Swan is the point person for NIC liaising with the government. But from my personal perspective, I walk into the building on a few mornings, and there are many, St. Lucians in inquiring about their claim, and they're pretty irate about it. And I typically tend to calm them down and simply refer them to the Ministry of Tourism, I understand. But I think Swan can give a better idea of how this income support program is handled.
To some extent, my understanding, I think the main issue of persons have applied, they've been processed and administered by the government. The payments are made either directly to the applicant's account that they would have indicated the money should be sent to. There also are check payments made for persons who don't have bank accounts. I believe the communication persons obviously are waiting, and my understanding is procedures have been put in place to inform those persons when their payments are ready for payment. And they're looking to institute, I believe, text messages and so on. I think they attempted to use email, from what I was told. It wasn't very successful in terms of reaching persons to let them know when the payment got processed and so on. But I guess in the absence of information, persons are maybe looking to who they believe. And Mr. McLean has explained that NIC is not the corporation entity responsible for making those payments, and we also do not provide information to applicants on the status of their payment. That is entirely administered by the government.
Okay, and at this point in time, I want to just read out a question coming from somebody who is self-employed. And on that note, I would like to encourage anyone who may have queries, questions, concerns, or even commendation to the NIC to please post your statements or your questions in the Facebook Live. Post those statements in the Facebook Live, and I will quickly peruse and see how best I can relate those questions and get some sort of response from the two representatives here. This question coming from someone who is self-employed: I have noticed that application processing takes more time, more than a month at a time. When the payment has finally come through, the amount is only for 1 month and not the 2 months it took to process. With the program extending up until September, applications again takes 1 month to process, and as a result, one payment may also come through. For example, the program spanning between April to September, that's 6 months, only 2 payments were received. That's in this individual's case, one in May and one in June. That person is asking, why is that the case, and shouldn't both or all payments come through when the monies are transferred to the bank?
Okay, so applications are processed by time period. Though the program is from April to September, it needs to be appreciated that until the time has passed, we don't pay in advance. So we would not be paying from April to September in one batch. The time has to elapse. We need to get, in the case of the self-employed, we don't have, say, employer uploaded because the applicant is also the employer by virtue of the nature of self-employed. However, those self-employed persons may return to trade. We don't know. We need to allow the time to pass, and we are depending on those self-employed persons to inform us when they have returned to employment. Also, they may start contributing to the national insurance, and that may give us an indication of whether or not they have returned to trade. So we don't pay in advance, and that is one of the reasons why the applicant would not see all of the payments to September. However, if the period has elapsed, so we are in July, we are at the end of July, if a self-employed person, say, applied, I don't know, 2 months ago or last month, and we are processing their application, we would pay all of the outstanding periods at the same time, up to the period that we are at, not in advance. So that person should be seen, like I think the person did mention they got paid for April and May already, or June already, right?
May and in June.
May and, so they've already gotten paid basically up to date. What they need to get paid next is for July. And probably when the application was processed, we were probably at the beginning of July or June. So that is really in line with timing.
Okay. Still waiting on the questions coming from the individuals who are watching online via the Facebook platform. You can post your questions or your concerns and queries to the Facebook Live. In the meantime, we did have a notice coming from the NIC on the 17th of July, speaking on face-to-face individuals who want to come and make payments, because that aspect, that facility still remains open at your office. Can you just speak to us about this, give us a status update on how persons can continue to come into your office, what conditions, protocols apply, COVID-19 wise, etc.?
Well, we have instituted several measures to ensure the health and safety of our contributors, particularly when they visit our offices. So at our Castries office, we have special markings on the floors. We have restricted the number of persons at any given time inside of the office. We have erected a tent, which is a 40 by 20 tent. It's a pretty huge tent on the outside, and positioned the chairs in keeping with the required six feet distance. And we are providing the necessary temperature checks and hand sanitizer stations on entry and exit. Of course, we were forced to stop or suspend temporarily face-to-face operations during the shutdown. And so a number of persons were unable to make their contributions, and particularly the businesses continue to send their C-free forms once they reopened. So the public notice targeted self-employed persons and voluntary contributors to, let's make them aware that we are open and they can continue to make their contributions at all our offices.
Okay. I'm not sure if you covered this, but when will July payments be processed at the banks?
We have already started. Once we are in receipt of the information, so at our last interview, we encouraged employers, once the information is known, do not wait to upload if there are any changes. The portal facilitates that. We actually have employers who have gone ahead and uploaded and updated us on the status of July payments. We have started processing those. However, the focus has been to get June up to date, because like we said, we still have applications coming in. I don't have the exact number, but when I checked the portal yesterday, I actually saw quite a few new applications coming in yesterday. And that is just one day, and it goes back. So we continue to catch up, and again, some of those applicants are not just for July going forward, they are some old ones. So we are looking to catch up, and we continue to try to get up to date with the July payments as well.
And still, 718 employers is still a lot of employers that still need to provide that information so that we can make the payments to the contributors or the applicants. And I suspect a lot of the applicants you see sharing their concerns and expressing their concerns about not receiving a payment. That can explain why a number of applicants are still yet to receive a payment, because for June particularly, we've already indicated that we will we'll only make the payments with the required upload by the employers. Okay.
There's been someone who's queried, they've stated that they made their application successfully, but they have not received their payment yet. Their employer has filled in all the necessary information, and they have a co-worker who received her payments but they themselves have not yet received their payments. What circumstances would cause that, perhaps?
It could be a case with that particular person's employment. So one of the things that we have found, some persons have multiple employers. So while they may be unemployed with one, they continue to be employed with another. I'm not saying, obviously, we don't know the specifics of this case, and we would not seek to address that specifically. But if somebody is still gainfully employed, they probably would not receive, but there would need to be communication to them to let them know that their claim has been disallowed, and for whatever reason, if they're probably in receipt. It could be that they're in receipt of another benefit from NIC and not aware that they can't get both. I'm not sure. That might be another reason.
Okay.
So we take them on a case-by-case basis, and we try to address them. We also, I'm not sure whether it is a case that some of those persons who are out there waiting for payments and they have been disallowed and they probably are not aware. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if that is the case, because we do have communication in place to send those out. And we invite persons to continue to reach out to us, and we explain when we do. One of the other aspects that we are seeing are persons who would have gotten paid. I'm not sure that answers the person's question. I'm looking to move on to something else. Okay. All right. One of the queries that we are getting, and McNaughton started by explaining it in the beginning, that we took a policy decision to make payments to some individuals who may, if we had the information, may not have qualified. For example, if we had to get particular information from the employer at the time the claim is being processed, it probably would support that that individual would not qualify for whatever reason. For example, maybe if that person was dismissed because of, I don't know, some altercation not related to COVID, some reason other than COVID. If at the time of processing the application, that information did not come to NIC, we probably would pay that individual for that period, in keeping with the policy that to not allow persons to wait unduly because we are waiting for information from the employer. Let us pay only for April and May, because we believe it is reasonably safe to assume that that person was really unemployed during that period. However, if information comes to us subsequently that supports that that individual should not have been entitled, well, for one, we would disallow any payments going forward. NIC does have communicated a caveat before that if information comes to our attention before, we are able to review payments. So some persons may have received the payment with the expectation of continuing, and they may not.
Has this occurred, and how many cases? Is it enough to talk about?
Not been able to quantify, but it has occurred, yes.
Interesting. Okay, I have another question here. I believe you covered it, but the reason for NIC not giving out lump sums. Do you give out lump sums, and if not, why?
We do give out lump sums.
Okay.
And you get an email communicating that you would have received payments for April, May, June, April and May, and the amount.
Okay.
Once the period has passed and we have all information to support paying for those periods, we do pay in lump sum.
Retroactively?
Retroactively.
Okay, understood. Okay, as we wrap up this morning, I haven't seen any new questions. I do have an individual asking here, what if, as at the time someone is paying, self-employed, and is also working a full-time job with another company, wouldn't they be qualified under the relief program as a full-time worker? So if they're working two jobs and they were laid off for one because of COVID, would they qualify?
Well, they continue to receive income. So what we attempt to do at NIC is take into consideration whether the primary income generating source has been ended or has ended as a result of COVID.
Okay.
So if that person continues to earn income, then they more than likely would not qualify under the program, because it is as a result of they're still in receipt of financial benefit. However, if the primary, we've had cases like that where somebody may have had two employers. However, the main employer, they would have lost income as a result of that, and there's a subsequent, which is very minute relative to their main income support, we probably would consider that case.
So it will be a case-by-case basis?
Case by case.
Okay. What is the time frame for employers to update the portals? I think that's a broad-based question.
As soon as they can. They can update once they have the information going as far as they can safely confirm. They're free to do that and inform us if there are any changes. We use the portal. The thing is, we have established the portal that interfaces with our system to streamline the processing. Some employers, the receipt of information of no change via email is safe, although we are changing that slightly, and that is something employers should look out for. An email would be sent that makes it even simpler to communicate whether or not there are changes, and if there are changes, be directed as to where they need to go to make the change. So an email is going to come out advising employers, if you have no changes for May, June, because we still have persons who have not communicated whether or not there are any changes for May, for June, July, they would get a button where they can simply click in the email that says no changes. That updates our system so we can use it to process. Before, they would send us an email telling us there are no changes, and we would use that information to process the applications. But because it's now going to be electronic, it's going to make the process even more streamlined. If there are changes, they also will get another option to click that would direct them back to the portal to make those changes. Okay. Some persons are sending in the nature of the changes via email. That is not the route that would be fastest. Because now if you have to take the email and go make the changes in the portal that feeds into the process, that can slow down the process.
Claims, yeah.
Okay, and briefly, 2 more questions. Why is it, I'm just reading verbatim, why is it that up to a day like today, I have not received any payments from NIC? My form was filled since in April, and also sick leave from February, and up to now, nothing. I have been going on in and out of NIC making queries, and all I would be asked to do is to keep checking your bank account, and up to now.
Okay, so that person has both
a sick
leave
and
from prior to February. I believe at February, yeah.
Oh, prior to COVID, and they have submitted the banking information. I'm not sure of the specifics of the case as to why. It's
a little difficult unless you have the specifics of the case.
At it.
However, I think also, I wonder if it's a case of the bank, it has been paid and the banking information was incorrect. We have quite a number of those instances where the wrong banking information was entered.
Okay.
I think best if the person can, call us.
Yeah.
They can call and speak to me, and I can certainly look into the case and give them, because then we can have the circumstances and look at the specifics of this case and assist them.
Okay, and we have time for just one more question. How long does the process take to get approved, to get verified? That's what they asked.
Of course, as anything else, it depends on circumstances, but on average, okay, so we have seen numbers approved a day as many as, say 1,000 if you divide it by the number of applicants. It shouldn't take more than, say, 5 minutes, if so much, to process once all of the information is in.
Okay.
Right? Because of how integrated and maybe 5 minutes is being overly optimistic, but say 10 minutes.
Okay.
Moving from one screen to the other and looking out for flags if there are any queries and so on, and processing,
Okay, so that would require employee information and all of the information being accurate.
Yes, but I probably should correct that. There's a difference between if somebody is looking at processing in terms of their payment being approved for payment and is moving from processing down to being paid, because they're different
tiers of,
They're different reviews, but they're also different departments. So we have a department that is responsible for processing the application, reviewing it to make sure the person still is eligible, qualifies, employee information is there, and so on. And that is the part I was speaking of in the first instance. And then it is moved on to somebody who does a second review, because checks and balances. You need to make sure something is not overlooked. And then it goes to the accounting department who does the upload, and so that is another part. So, yeah, so the process for it can take, I don't know,
about a day, I think, give or take, but between processing, verification, and then
payment,
goes through account.
yeah.
And then it takes a few days after we've sent it to the bank via the EFT method before it hits the accounts. And in the case of the credit unions, we've observed that it takes a little longer. So if the information you provided was for a credit union, then I think it's safe that you can allow for a couple of days, as it takes a little longer to get to their account.
Okay. Well, we have used up all the time for our NTN midday update with the National Insurance Corporation today. I offer either you, Mr. McLean, or Mrs. Shalary Payne to just give us a quick round off as we close.
Well, we're pretty happy with the progress that we've made under the ERP. We've streamlined our operations, as Suwan indicated earlier. We've constantly been developing our systems, our software. The guys are working around the clock. Once we recognize ways in which we can become more efficient, we have done that. And then we will continue to process claims. I think we've said repeatedly that every qualifying applicant will be paid. We have a few queries, not a lot. We've taken it down significantly that we're still working to resolve. And once the employers continue to provide the information, I think we can see payments being made a lot faster to the applicants.
Okay, thank you both very much for your time. I can imagine, you know, how feverish, how many long hours you've been putting into getting this economic relief program up and running for the individuals who qualify for the NIC ERP. Again, Mr. McNaughton McLean, Communications Manager, and Mrs. Suan Shalary Payne, the Head of Group Internal Audit from the National Insurance Corporation, giving us the weekly update. We didn't have the NIC last week. Of course, we did have Parliament, and you know that takes priority. But we did have them today, and we do hope you were listening intently and got the answers that you did seek in your questions in the Facebook Live. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jessie Leonce. Do stay tuned for more NTN programming. Goodbye.